This video is going to talk about Tinto student departure theory, which should be a refresher, so I'm going to go through this also relatively quickly. So for Tinto's transition theory, we're going to look at this in terms of Aston's theory, particularly regarding the input environment output model, the IEO model. So if you haven't seen or watched that video yet, I recommend you go back and watch that one first, as this one will make more sense to you. And then we'll also be referencing his student involvement theory. So for Tinto's theory, what he really discusses and focuses on is campus connections, and it is based on the retention and attrition of students. So essentially, if a student is connected to campus, either via the academic or the social system, they are more likely to persist. That is the boiled down, most simplistic version of Tinto's theory, but there's so much more to that. So when Tinto developed his theory, he really looked at it from an anthological approach. And he looked at it from three different areas. The first one is that a student needs to experience separation from their previous environment, whether that be high school, family, or something that's familiar to them. They need to separate, they need to start to establish the new norms, the new expectations, the new values that is within a campus culture. Okay, it detaches a student from their comfort level. That's very, very important. The next piece is the actual transition, and this usually happens when they're a freshman. And this is where they start to separate from their old family community. It's a period of time when a student begins to interact in new ways with members of a new group. It can result in tactics such as isolation, training, and other ordeals to ensure separation from the individual from past associations. That's why it's so important within the first 6 weeks to ensure students are feeling connected and are transitioning appropriately, because they're in a new community and it's unfamiliar. Then we get into incorporation. And this is where it involves students taking on new patterns of interaction with members of a new group, and they're starting to feel an establishment of a new community. They're starting to feel as a member, they're accepting the norms, and then the final result generally is persistence and graduation. Now, this is a process that involves, it's ongoing, but I wonder if as you were listening to me, you thought, man, this sounds really familiar. Well, it should, because we have inputs, we have the past experiences, something that's familiar to students, their family ties, their high school experience. All of those things can be considered inputs or a form of environment. Okay, so if we remember the input, the environment, the output here, okay, so then they have a new environment that they're transitioning to. And how this environment plays into whether it's positive or negative will significantly affect the outcome. And as you probably guessed, this is also an environment. So this piece right here, the transitional piece, and whether or not they feel a part of a community will have a big impact on their persistence. Alright, so as you can see, Aston's IEO model is really everywhere in its simplest form. So what types of departure are there? Well, there's forced and voluntary. Forced departure are grades, financial, judicial, and family. Alright, a student may flunk out of school. They may not have the money. They may be kicked out. Their family may call them home. The other part is voluntary. They may feel isolated, may have homesickness, they may transfer to a different institution. It may be that it's a personal choice to go back and be with family, or they may not see a cost benefit. You will tend, more often than not, you'll see homesickness, isolation with first-generation college students. The same is true for family. Cost benefit is very common for low-income students. Okay? So these are the two types of departure that students experience. Now, what does all this mean together? Well, for Tinto, there were two systems. There's the academic system, and then there's the social system. And I'm going to talk about the academic systems first. For the academic system, there's really two parts. There's the informal academic system, which is informal faculty interaction, outside classroom experiences, and overall how they feel about the academics at campus. What dispositions are they bringing? Do they have a value to academics? All right, so think about Aston. That's the input. All right, so what the student is bringing connects to the input here. And this is the biggie. We got biggie here. Then the other piece is the formal academic system. All right, so this is like the little e. And here, this is their classes, the grades, studying, all of the formal stuff they need to do in order to persist, which is an outcome. All right. Now, the academic system drives the informal and formal systems. All right. And if the student suffers in the academic system, the only outcome is not graduation. Okay, that's the biggest difference between the academic and the social system. A student cannot persist if they fail in the academic system. Now, the opposite is true for the social system. A student can succeed academically, but not be connected socially. So here, it's very similar to the academic system. So we have the social system, which is the big E. We have an informal social system, all right, which this one, as opposed to academics, is a little e, because we have student relationships, campus climate, how do they feel about the campus climate, is it positive, is it negative, all of those things. And then we have the formal social system, which is also a little e, and here these are extracurriculars, residence life, are they getting involved, do they feel a part of the social system. And just like the academic system, the social system drives these two systems here. So that's the academic and the social system. So now let's put everything together. We have Aston's IEO model. We have Tinto's academic and social systems. And what does that mean? Well, if we think about it, here's Tinto's theory in a nutshell. All right, a student's coming in with their family background. They're coming in with skills and attributes. All right, so here we have environment, according to Aston. We have skills and attributes, which is inputs. All right, and these two things connect to how the student's going to respond to the academic and the social system. But there are always external forces and choices that are at play. And then if all of this works together, then the outcome is persistence, graduation, all right, in its simplest form. Now, what happens if there's a large academic system, an average social system, small influences in terms of external forces? Well, according to Tinto, this situation would still result in graduation and persistence. Because if the student is committed to academics, that is the most influential system in terms of persistence and graduation. All right, now if we think about this in terms of the social system, if a student has a large social system and they have a average academic system and average external forces and choices that aren't having a huge impact, well, the outcome is going to be the same. It is most likely to be persistence. All right. Then what happens here if we have a very, very small academic system and a very large social system? Well, in this instance, persistence is likely not to happen because they're so focused on the social aspects of college. Development will happen in certain areas because if you remember Aston in the continuum, leaning more towards Will and less like Carlton, student may be more likely to get in trouble. They may not persist in the academics. They may not be studying, feel connected. All of those things are happening here. All right. But the biggest thing that we're going to be thinking about is how do skills, attributes, how does the student's identity as they see it relate to all of this? That's the question you need to be thinking yourselves in the IEO model and in your journal reflections in your college student diverse paper. So when we're using these theories, that's what we need to think about. How do these skills, attributes, subculture, self-identification relate to all of this? How does being a first-generation student contribute to the academic and social system? How does being low income contribute or take away from the academic or social system? Are there external forces that they're feeling that others are not, such as African Americans at a PWI? Are they experiencing racism and prejudices on a daily basis? That's an external force that is going to contribute and have a large impact and can negatively affect the academic and the social system. Because for minorities at PWIs, if they're having that negative campus experience, then the social system, if they can't find somewhere to relate or find a safe place, then the social system is going to be a negative aspect to them, and then that's going to become a detractor. And that means that persistence in graduation is likely going to decline.